Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Susan Suchocki Brown, and we're so glad that you could be with us this morning for worship services. We're always glad that you join us virtually and that you know that we're here for you. Though we can't see you, you are held in our thoughts and in our minds, and we're available. So we hope that you'll make notes to us, send us email messages, and be in touch. This is South Church, and we are happy to have you here. Worship doesn't happen in a vacuum. Worship happens with lots of people in the foreground and in the background, and I am always honored to work with the worship associates that help to make worship so very, very special. This morning, Bret Newbury is our worship associate. And Bret, would you introduce our guest and our music?
Good morning. I am a member of a team of worship associates that helps Reverend Susan to bring these services to you. With us today, we also have our Director of Music Ministries, Joanne Connolly, who will talk about what we're doing for music today.
Thank you, Bret. We're excited to have Keith Kron here this morning with us. Thank you, Keith, for being with us. And we're excited to put music together, Susan and Adams and I, around the future of religion. Thanks for being here. And back to you, Bret.
Along with our Director of Music Ministry, Joanne Connolly, we also work with our Director of Lifespan Ministries, Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Religious Education, Jen Del Deo, and a special thanks to Pip Clues for her video editing services. As mentioned, our sermon today will be delivered by Reverend Keith Kron. He is the Director of the Transitions Office for the UUA. In that position, he helps congregations and ministers navigate the ministerial search process. Formerly, he was the UUA Director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns. He has visited over 450 UU congregations across the continent, helping them in welcoming congregation work, beyond categorical thinking workshops, and helping them with public witness. Reverend Kron is a former elementary school teacher. He plays tennis and collects children's books in his spare time.
Thank you, Bret. It's good to be with you all. It's been good to be with you all as we've worked on the Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop as part of your ministerial search process this year. And this morning we will get a chance to think about the future, not only of you, but of religion and what we can do.
Glad that you could be with us this morning, Keith. Welcome, and welcome everyone. Let our worship begin.
The South Church Spiritual Book Group is hosting a discussion of The Reader by Bernard Schlink this coming Wednesday, December 9th at 7 p.m. All are welcome. Please contact southchurchbookgroup@gmail.com for the Zoom link. And join us for a virtual Vespers service to celebrate the winter solstice and the return of the light. Readings, chant, and drumming to honor the solstice season will be offered by Amy Antonucci, Dave Drucker, Kathy Okeisen, Ann Deminoff, and Tina Charpentier. The service will be held Thursday, December 17th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. The meeting ID is 8463-057-3652 and can also be found in your Sunday morning email. We hope you're able to join us. We also have a new photo challenge. Send us a picture of yourself holding a star. You can make one out of any materials you have at home or hold one that's already made. Just make sure that if the star is small, you hold it close enough to the camera so that we can see the star as well as your beautiful face. Please send pictures to Jen Del Deo at southchurch-uu.org before December 12th. And finally, we hope you are able to join us for our Christmas Eve service this year. It will be held at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Zoom, which is different than our usual Sunday morning worship platform. To get the Zoom link, visit the South Church website and register. Have a candle ready for our traditional candle lighting. We really hope to see you there.
Hi, we're in the 6th and 7th grade service learning program at South Church. We're talking about caretaking this month, and to go with that topic, we are doing a cookie caretaking project.
We'll make cookies to be delivered to South Church friends who may be feeling lonely or would like to know they're being thought of. So if you know someone in our community who you think could use a cookie delivery, please let us know by this Tuesday.
You can email their names to Jen Deldero at jendeldero@southchurch-uu.org.
Thanks.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Have you ever been part of a group through work, school, community, church that worked really well? Fired on all cylinders, got the job done, got praise from those around you, got a big thumbs up from the boss. Feels good, doesn't it? How about a group that didn't work out so well? Couldn't quite seem to get out of your own way, got wrapped around the axle, couldn't get the job done. Well, as an engineer, I've done a lot of group projects and ended up on groups that worked well, groups that didn't. While I was thinking about this, two of the groups stood out in my mind. One was the group that I worked on my senior design project with at school. That group was asked by a company outside the school to design us a rig to figure out how much energy we would get out of solid fuel. Probably doesn't mean much to a lot of you, but it was a cool project. We designed a rig, added sensors, connected it all to computers, took data, did lots of runs. It was a blast. Each of us contributed some unique experience and specialty to the project. We all knew what our end goal was. We all knew what we needed to do. And in the end, it all came together. We end up with a great project and a good grade. Heck, one of the guys in the group got hired by the company that asked the question. Well, that group worked well. On the other side of the coin, a group that didn't work so well, one that I got involved with from work. This was a group where the mission wasn't so clear. We were supposed to increase communication between engineering groups. Very nebulous idea. What we were actually assigned to do was work on the problems that didn't fit neatly into one engineering group or another. Well, as you can probably see from that, that meant that we were working on problems that most of the people in the group felt they didn't apply to them. You know, these are problems that your engineering group isn't cognizant of. Well, then why am I working on this? It led to a lot of people feeling like the group wasn't really worth being a part of. It led to their bosses thinking that the group wasn't worth being part of, to the point where people were being told by their bosses, don't even go to the meetings. I'm not paying you to do this. I'm paying you to do your day job. Even when we did accomplish something, we'd write it up, management usually just threw it in the trash. It didn't feel good. And it felt like it took forever. So what's the difference? To me, the big difference was having common goals, knowing what direction we were all headed in. It's like, to use a metaphor, like rowing a boat. If you're doing that with a group of people, you all have to be going in the same direction. Because if the people on the left side of the boat want to go in one direction and the people on the right side of the boat want to go the other way, all you're going to do is go around in circles. You're never going to get anywhere. Well, groups need to have at least an idea of what direction they want to head in. A mission, a vision, something. We as a church are going through an interim period, a strange period. With COVID-19, virtual services, interim ministry, we are in a period where it can be a little hard to see what our mission is. Well, I fall back to the UU principles and the South Church mission statement. That's our mission. That's our vision. That is the direction that we should all be rowing in. We all have different ideas of spirituality and different paths to take to get there. That is our different expertises. That is our different things that we bring to the table that can help the group through our diversity, through our different ideas, through our different lenses. But we all have the same vision and same direction to pull those oars so that we all move forward. And I look forward to pulling those oars with you.
During our chalice lighting ritual during this holiday season, we observed the twinkling of starlight, the shimmering of tree lights seen through the windows, and pleasant glow of candles nestled on sills. Each of these sights is a reminder of the spectacle of the holiday, the bringing of light to dark evenings, and to symbolizing becoming light bearers to one another. Each Sunday this month, as we gather for worship, we honor the many spiritual and religious traditions that are celebrated by members of this community. And to begin this morning, let us light our chalice as a symbol of faith, hope, and love. And may its light bless our hearts, our spirits, and our lives. And along with our chalice this week, we honor the season of Advent. In many households around the world, the traditional Advent wreath is part of the holiday season. 4 candles are placed on the table in a wreath of evergreens, one to be lighted on each of the 4 Sundays preceding Christmas, and a 5th candle will be lit on Christmas Eve. And the Advent time for those who honor the Christian traditions is a time of waiting for the birth of Jesus. Each candle represents hope, peace, joy, and love, with the 5th announcing the birth of Jesus. And today we light the 1st candle and we add the 2nd. Spirit of the South, Spirit of fire, of noontime and summer, be with us through the heat of the day and help us to be ever growing in peaceful ways. Warm us with the strength and energy for the work that awaits us. And now let us join together in reading our mission statement. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community.
when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunderclouds will appear. Wait and see what a world that can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world that can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world that can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world that can be if we share, if we care, you and me.
Our story for all ages is entitled We Don't Eat Our Classmates by Ryan Higgins. It's a story of Penelope Rex and her first day of school. Penelope Rex was nervous. It's not every day a little T-Rex starts school. What are my classmates going to be like? Will they be nice? How many teeth will they have? This was very important to Penelope. Penelope's mom bought her a new backpack with ponies on it. Ponies were Penelope's favorite because ponies are delicious. Penelope's dad packed her a lunch of 300 tuna sandwiches and 1 apple juice. And finally, the big day came. And Penelope Rex was very surprised to find out that all of her classmates were children. So she ate them, because children are delicious. Penelope Rex, said Mrs. Noodleman, we don't eat our classmates. Please spit them out at once. So she did. It was not the best way to start school. Still, Penelope was determined to have a good first day. She tried hard to make friends at recess, but standing at the bottom of the slide with her mouth open didn't help. She finger-painted some of her best work, but the picture of the dinosaur eating the child that she finger-painted didn't help either. She even saved Griffin Emery a seat at lunch. You can sit here next to me. He didn't. Penelope started to notice that everyone was making friends but her. And it was lonely. When she got home, her dad asked about her first day of school. I didn't make any friends, Penelope cried. None of the children wanted to play with me. Penelope Rex, her father asked, did you eat your classmates? Well, maybe, just sort of, a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to make friends, said her dad, especially if you eat them. You see, Penelope, children are just the same as us on the inside, but they're just tastier. And that gave Penelope a lot to think about. The next day, Penelope tried really hard. But poor Penelope. She couldn't stop herself from eating her classmates. Mrs. Noodleman, Penelope ate William Amoto again. And even though she spit him out, they were all afraid of her. Except for Walter. Walter was the goldfish. So Penelope tried to make friends with him. Will you be my friend, she asked. and she stuck her finger inside the bowl to pet him, and he went chomp. "Ee!" cried Penelope. "He's eating my finger. Wah!" After that, once Penelope found out what it was like to be someone's snack, she lost her appetite for children. She stopped eating her classmates, even when Cece Woodman spilled barbecue sauce all over herself. And soon Penelope made friends, playing hide and seek and making brownies for her classmate. "Want a brownie?" she said. "I helped make them." And they did. Now, even when children look especially delicious, she peeks at Walter the goldfish and remembers what it's like when someone tries to eat you. And Walter stares back and he licks his lips. Because dinosaurs are delicious.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Jelinek, and I've been a member at South Church for about 8 years now. And I was truly honored when I was asked to say a little bit about why South Church has been important to me. And the first thing that came to mind was something that a professor and mentor had said to me back in graduate school. And that is that we need webs of people in our lives, that at the center, at the hub, at the core of the web, we have all the people who support us, who share our values, and are there for us when we need to remember why we're doing what we're doing. And then we can have the strength to bring that out into the world and go off on our own lines, and there's always that hub to come back to. And South Church has really been one of those places for me. South Church was a sanctuary for me when I needed a place to shelter my heart. I've cried and I've laughed in the pews. I've held hands and sung while my heart opened. In South Church, I discovered a place where I could feel comfort in the company of like minds, a place to close my eyes and be at peace. South Church refills my well after a week of ladling it out. South Church has also been a sanctuary for my children. My son Dante, who is now 20, found a home in the youth program. RE gave him a safe place to explore who he was and who he wanted to be. I've gone on retreats, and all the things, all the activities that I've been involved in with South Church has given me a place to enjoy, to laugh, to be at peace, to do whatever I need to do in that moment. It's a place where my heart feels calm. It is truly a great comfort to know that South Church has been there for me, even during this time of change, and even though it's not the same as it used to be, I know that it's there. I know that my hub is always there for me when I need to go back to it. So if you're one of those people who has your pledge form still sitting around, you haven't filled it out, you haven't just gotten to it yet, please do so that South Church can always be there for us in the same way. Thank you.
Today's offering can be paid to the South Church website as shown on your screen, or mailed to the 73 Court Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire address. Today's shared plate will be shared with the ACLU of New Hampshire. They work on issues such as data privacy, First Amendment rights, immigrants' rights, LGBTQ rights, reproductive freedom, and smart justice. They are protecting the rights of liberty, justice, and equality for all Granite Staters.
Hello everyone, I'm Paul Rastiopi. I'm the Director of Development at the ACLU of New Hampshire. And I want to thank everyone at the South Church for inviting us to talk to you today about our work next year in 2021. With one political party controlling all levers of government, we're expecting to make headway on some issues, but we expect to face strong headwinds on some others, particularly voting rights. On police reform, we've been on the Governor's Commission on Accountability for the past few months, as have some BLM members, And we support the recommendations of the commission, and we expect them to be passed by the legislature this year. These are good first steps, and there's much more work to be done. On racial justice, we're supporting all Black Lives Matter chapters as well as Black-led organizations on fighting systemic racism in our state. We also will continue to be fiscal sponsors of all BLM chapters going forward. On reproductive freedoms, we expect this to be a very difficult year. We expect to see many restrictive bills in the legislature, and we will be devoting more resources to the fight going forward. On LGBTQ rights, we'll be pushing for bipartisan support on legislation to make it easier for transgender individuals to change their birth marker on their birth record. And on immigrants' rights, we'll continue to use the same litigation strategy we've been using for the past 3 years, which has been very effective in curbing ICE and CBP's abuses in the state and regionally as well. We'll also be working with our partners to build up the infrastructure to give them full support that they need. And lastly, I will say that the ACLU is just going to continue to do what we've always done, and that is hold our leaders and institutions accountable and press our elected leaders to defend and advance civil rights going forward. And thank you all for all that you do to bring equality and justice to the Granite State. And best wishes for a happy, healthy, and safe holiday. Take care.
This reading is from Emily Bernard and her book, Black is the Body. It's about how she experienced harm on the night of violent act when she was stabbed by a young man with mental health issues over 25 years ago at a coffee shop in New Haven. She writes, I did experience terrible pain on the night of August 7th. The person responsible for it was the surgeon on call. I lay on a gurney, feeling helpless and afraid. The surgeon walked over and, without saying a word to me or even looking in my direction, plunged his fingers into my gaping knife wound. I gasped, and I instinctively grabbed his hand. It was only then that the man looked at me and said icily, "Don't touch my hand." His eyes were Aryan blue and as cold as his voice. I asked questions about what was happening, and he refused to respond. Only the attending nurses treated me with any kindness and respect. Whenever I tell the story of the night I got stabbed, I always say the person who did the most injury to me, who left the deepest wounds, was not Daniel Silva, the young man who stabbed me, but it was that surgeon.
As we embark on another New England winter, let us pray that those who are cold will find warmth, that those who are in the dark will find light, that those who are in need will find generosity, that we will all find community in the hearts and minds of those who are around us, and that we will all be together again in the new year. May it be so.
Now we open our hearts to these words. It's entitled Unclenching. It was nearly a perfect summer day for a walk. I wasn't alone. My favorite sighting on my street in Providence was a woman walking her adorable French bulldog, Luke. I heard her say, "Good boy, Luke," several times as she pulled slightly on the leash to keep him from being distracted. Around the corner comes a man with a pit bull. Luke, the French bulldog, goes stock still. But the pit bull is wagging her tail with the greatest of hope and charm, clearly excited about the possibility of a new friend. And she won me over. The woman tries to get Luke to move forward in vain this time as he is playing statue. Eventually, the man with the pit bull reaches the woman and her dog. And if possible, Luke gets even stiffer. The woman is trying to tell him it's okay, and the pit bull sniffs hopefully and inquisitively at her new wished-for friend. And then, in an instant, Luke relaxes and sniffs back. And quickly their tails are all a-wagging as the sniffs and nuzzles and snorts commence. I notice the odors have relaxed and then have unclenched, and they are now talking amiably, though near as I can tell, their tails are not a-wagging with the same veracity as their pets. It's only then that I realize that I had been clenching and now feel my own body relaxing. I left the happy foursome and headed off, thinking how much a metaphor this was for today's times. How we all seem to be living lives of trepidation, and yet hope and kindness are out there if we look beyond the stereotypes, if we present ourselves with kindness, if we just try. I think about the reputation that pit bulls have, and yet she was the kindest of all. Maybe in these trying and difficult times we need to be a little bit more like the pit bull, in whatever ways we can, offering a little hope and kindness to those new friends we might make. I've been thinking a lot about Pittsburgh. And I've been thinking a lot about recent events and religion. There was, of course, the shooting at the synagogue And there was, of course, the recent news of the sex scandal that happened within the Catholic Church. And both of those events have got me thinking about not only Pittsburgh, but about religion. And why would anyone these days trust religion at all? But then I think about Robert Fulgham, the UU author, writer, minister, who wrote these words about being about religion, because he writes, "To be human is to be religious. To be religious is to be mindful. To be mindful is to pay attention. And to pay attention is to sanctify existence." I'm reminded that religion is more than just what happens in a church. It's about how we are and how we live our lives. But it also made me think of 2 gatherings I had with ministers recently. And one of the things that it made me think about was the fact that I asked the ministers to talk about what does a congregation need from a minister. And I asked them to create a chart. What does it need most? What are the basics? And they said things that you would expect. They said things like, we need good sermons, we need good pastoral care, we need someone who's going to show up and speak. But what surprised me more than anything else is not a single person, not a single minister said, what the minister needs to do is to do no harm. And that what they need to do is to build trust within their congregational community. And as I thought about that, I also thought about that I've never heard a search committee also say what they needed from a minister was someone who did no harm, someone who would build trust. And maybe this is a new way we could think about religion. What would happen if we were places that did no harm, where trust was built? And how do we do that? How do we rebuild trust and faith in religion? How do we show up to ourselves? And how do we show up in the wider world? This has made me think about a story from many years ago when I was representing the UUA following the death of Matthew Shepard. I was only one of 2 denominations to send people to the gatherings after Matthew Shepard was left to offense and died in Wyoming. And I came because the minister asked me to show up. The minister in Laramie, Wyoming asked me to show up. And he said, you know, what I'd like to do on Sunday morning is to read some letters that we've already gotten from people offering their support, and then just have you say a few words. So I thought a little bit about what I was going to say and was glad to show up in Laramie, Wyoming and be there and representing our faith, showing what we believed. And the minister read a letter from someone that was very moving and then turned to me and said, and now Reverend Kron will give the sermon this morning. Now, I had not prepared a sermon. I just fared a few remarks. So I took what I said and added some things to it. I don't remember any of what I said. But I did remember that it was important for me to be there, for us to be together in these difficult times. For the UUA to say that this congregation, that this moment mattered. Later, as we were headed to the fence where we were going to lay some flowers, the minister said to me, we're going to put down some flowers, and then if you'll just say a word of remembrance about Matthew, something that we can take with us, I think that will be very important. And I agreed. So we showed up at the fence. There were about 30 people from the congregation surrounding this fence on this very muddy Sunday. And the minister laid the flowers, saying, these are for Matthew. And then he turned to me and said, and now Reverend Kron will lead the memorial service for Matthew Shepard. I was quickly stunned, but began speaking. honoring the life of this young man, honoring that people showed up to remember him, honoring that we have a commitment to treat each other better than the way that Matthew was treated, and to be there for each other in times of need. Later, when I talked with the minister about this and why he had done what he'd done, he said, "You have to understand, I'm brand new to ministry. I have no idea what I should be doing in these situations." And I said to him, no one has any idea what we should be doing in these situations, which is why we show up together, why we just be together and support one of each other and witness that this life mattered and that the world can be a better place. That we simply have to show up for each other in these difficult times. And it made me think that it's not just the big moments, but it's the little moments. And it's not just the big moments that trust happen between a minister and a congregation. Trust is built in the little moments. And this is what Brene Brown, the researcher, says. Trust is built in lots of little moments. And that made me think, if trust is built in lots of little moments, it can also be torn down in lots of little moments. And it made me think back to a class I took in seminary, a class on death and dying, a class where the professor, a Holocaust survivor, who now worked with people considering suicide, trying to keep them from doing themselves harm, had us one day pretend we were hospital chaplains. And she had us be hospital chaplains for a patient who could barely speak, could not move, had very little control over what was going on for their lives. And she asked us to go in and just simply be a chaplain with that person. So the first student walked in, sat next to the patient, and took his hand. At that point, Anna, the professor, stood up and said in a very loud and clear voice, "Don't you ever do that again." And we were all stunned. We all turned and looked at Anna. And she said, "I want you all to think about this particular moment. Think of that person, that patient lying there on their hospital bed, unable to move, unable to speak, having literally no control of their lives. And by taking their hand without asking them if you could take it, without asking them if they wanted, you took even more control away from them. What would have happened if you had given them the opportunity to say yes or no, if you had given them some control over what happened next? How much better that would have been and felt for the patient. But instead you did more harm by taking away more control. I've always thought about that story and the little ways that we do harm, even when we think we're doing good. And even when we think we're making a difference. I was talking with a friend of mine at the UUA whose son lived outside of Cleveland. He was visiting his son. His son was not a UU. But he was taking his son and his friends, two of his friends, all in their 20s, to a Cleveland baseball game. And they passed the Unitarian Universalist congregation on the west side of Cleveland. And they all saw on the side of the congregation's building huge banners that said Black Lives Matter. We are a welcoming congregation. And immediately the three younger people began to talk and say things like, well, if I were to go to church anywhere, that would be the church I would want to go to. That's a church that's really making a difference in the world. That's a church that reflects my values. And I wondered, what would happen if they did show up in that church? Would they find that same welcome? Would they have those same good feelings? They would show up wanting to make a difference. And they would be told that they are welcomed in this congregation. But would they be told with caveats? Controlling a little bit of what they did. Could they show up and be 25, or would they show up and expected to be asked like they were 60 and 70 and 80, like most of the people in the congregation? Was there an expectation that this is how you be a Unitarian Universalist? Would they show up and be asked immediately, well, could you serve on this committee? Could you serve on that committee? We need someone for the board. We need you to give at this level to be a member of our congregation. Or could we simply show up and welcome them for who they are and let them do their own discovery? Being polite, engaging them, yet not prescribing for them. We often do this also not just for our younger folks, but also for people of color. And we often make assumptions about why they are there. A colleague of mine, African-American man, showed up one Sunday morning as the guest preacher, Unitarian Universalist minister, showed up in a suit, in a stole, holding a folder with his sermon, walked into the building. The greeter looked up at him and said, "Oh, good morning. Are you here to clean the building this morning?" I can tell you, as someone who's visited over 450 UU congregations, often dressed like this, I am never asked if I am there to clean the building. And it just made me wonder what happens when someone new shows up. What assumptions are already made about them? What harm do we do when we aren't thinking? And it made me think that we try, as we did in the Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop, to look at the biases we have that we come in with and talk about how they get in our way of actually treating everyone as human, as religious, letting people walk through the door to sanctify their existence and be one among us. Or will we make assumptions and assume just because someone has a different theology than what we know, if someone has a different set of beliefs about something about what we know, do we get as rigid as the fundamentalists that so many of us left? How open are we to the whole person in front of us? This moment, following this pandemic and during this pandemic, could be a golden moment for Unitarian Universalism. There are so many people out there who want a faith that is multi-theological, that is diverse, that celebrates people of all ages, and who learns how to incorporate their Unitarian Universalist values into their life. And that takes time. Are we going to be able to reach out to a world that needs us? Or, as we regather at a certain point, will we simply decide we can't have people who aren't exactly like us out? Will we circle ourselves into an ever smaller circle? And I've even asked some congregations that are like this, that have been in ministerial search, is what you really need a minister, or is what you really need a hospice chaplain? Because if we stay exactly the same, we will not have the same appeal. We will need to think about how Unitarian Universalism can transform the lives of all kinds of different people, and not just people who look, act, and talk like us. We simply cannot reduce people to a single story. The Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie talks about the danger of the single story, and she talks about the danger of the single story and stereotypes is not that the stereotype is wrong, but it's incomplete, because stereotypes make everyone a single story. And so we assume that everyone does something because they're young, because they come from a particular background, because they look a certain way. How do we let people come into Unitarian Universalism and hold all the multiple stories that they are? And let our Unitarian Universalist faith affect them and help them grow. Will we allow ourselves as Unitarian Universalists to be more than a single story, an only story? Or will we continue to commit little acts of violence and say that this one story is our only story as Unitarian Universalists? How do we unclench? How do we do no harm? How do we pay attention? Sanctify existence. How do we be religious now? How do we live side by side? Remember my former seminary professor, who was the dean of the school, talking about serving on a committee with all the other deans of all the schools in the Graduate Theological Union. And he was talking about a meeting where he and the dean of the American Baptist Seminary disagreed about a particular topic. And Bob said what surprised him more than everything else was not that they disagreed, but that everyone was trying to have them believe the same thing. And finally, Bob said, I just want you to think about this. I want to reflect on this. My friend Tom and I here disagree on this particular topic. I am more interested in knowing what you all believe, what you all say, because together as 9 of us, we will come to a decision. And it's not about winners and losers. It's about making the best decision for the Graduate Theological Union. And when it's done, regardless of the decision, Tom and I will be friends. Because while we disagree, we matter more. Because we are human with each other. Because we matter to each other. How can we be more than one story and disagree with each other? Had we not run from the diversity as Unitarian Universalists that I believe will strengthen us? How do we commit to living our faith in the world? A final story from many years ago, when I was the director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns, and I was representing our faith at a conference on gender, religion, and sexuality. And I was one of 40 denominational representatives who were there, and we represented a wide variety of theology and perspectives. And on the opening day, when we were all seated on this long table, I found myself sitting next to John from the Church of God and from Mark from the Church of Christ. And the microphone was handed to John, and he said, "Hi, my name is John. I'm from the Church of God, and we're to the right of the right." And everyone laughed. He handed the microphone to me, and I said, "Hi, my name is Reverend Keith Kron. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister representing our association. I'm head of our Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns." And as soon as I said that, I had to stop talking because John and Mark were scooting their chairs away from me. Apparently, they'd never sat that close before. But once they stopped scooting their chairs, I said, "And we are to the left of the left." And I tossed the microphone to Mark and let him speak. We spent the next 3 days talking about all things about gender, sexuality, and religion. They were stunned that I talked that more of our ministers were women than men, that we believed in comprehensive sexuality education, that we could ordain bisexual, gay, lesbian, and transgender people. They were continually stunned by what I said. And on the last day of the conference, as things were wrapping up, John and Mark and 2 of his friends, probably named Matthew and Luke, came up to me and they said, "We'd like to have lunch with you." And I thought, well, this will be fun, but I agreed. And so at lunch that day, John and Mark and the 2 friends said, "We have listened to everything that you have said. And we want you to know that we disagree with literally every word that has come out of your mouth. But we want you to know that we respect you. Because at least you are clear about what you believe." And those 4 men were my teachers that day. I had reduced them to a single story. And they showed me more respect than I had expected and was probably giving them. So I thanked them, and we talked, and eventually the conversation shifted to football. They tentatively asked if I knew anything about football, and they were surprised that I knew more about football than the four of them did, and that I'd worked my way through college officiating football games. And so in that moment, I was their teacher. And we learned that each other was more than a single story, that we had many different stories within us. And my hope, as we think about what is next, we commit ourselves to seeing the multiple stories in front of us, in whom we might meet, that we commit to doing no harm, that we commit to living our values and deepening our faith in a world in whatever form and action it takes. My wish is that we will move forward and be what the world needs of us, a multi-theological, diverse faith that can show the world all of what we can be, all of what it can be, and more. My hope is that we relearn how to be religious, how to be human, and how to sanctify existence. Amen.
Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide. In the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side, then to stand with truth is noble when we share the wretched crust. There that cause brings fame and profit, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though his portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, then it is the brave one chooses, while the coward stands aside, till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." So as we go forth today from this place, keep making your story, keep telling your story, keep sharing your story. Make it a good one. Blessings to all.
Here are some ways that you can give to South Church. To make your 2021 pledge, fill out and mail your financial commitment form to South Church at 73 Court Street in Portsmouth, or send an email to the Annual Budget Committee Chair, Lori Bilby, at turningtide@comcast.net. To pay your pledge or to make donations, go to the South Church website, southchurch-uu.org, click on the donate button on the top, and follow the prompts. You can also mail us a check to South Church at 73 Court Street in Portsmouth, noting the type of gift that you are making. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out at 603-436-4762 or by emailing info@southchurch-uu.org.